The vast theater of America's Got Talent hummed with anticipation as the lights dimmed and a hush fell across the audience. In that stillness, a young woman stepped into the spotlight. Her name was Maria Lohati Dizon, a 20-year-old singer from Davao City, and though the stage seemed enormous beneath her feet, she carried herself with a quiet strength that hinted at stories deeper than her years. She clutched the microphone with both hands, her palms slightly slick from nerves, but her eyes, soft, dark, and steady, held the kind of determination born from long nights of practice, small-town performances, and dreams carried across oceans. The judges looked at her with mixed curiosity. Heidi smiled warmly. Howie leaned forward. Sophia admired her traditional Filipino pattern shawl. But Simon Cowell, he watched her with that unreadable expression, arms crossed, eyebrow lifted, a man waiting for something real. Maria took a shaky breath. She thought of her mother back in Davao, selling fruit in Bangkera Market. She thought of her father, who used to stay up late after work just to hear her sing. She remembered the countless barangay events where she would stand on makeshift stages, singing while neighbors clapped and children danced barefoot on the dusty ground. Those memories filled her chest with a warmth that pushed her fear aside. The music began, a soft instrumental that floated through the theater like a breeze. Maria closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of her entire journey settle inside her. When she opened them again, something in her gaze had changed, clearer, louder, stronger. She released her first note. It drifted gently at first, like a whisper carried by wind, and the audience leaned in instinctively. The acoustics of the AGT stage captured every detail of her voice, its purity, its delicate vibrato, the honesty embedded in every syllable. Even Simon's face shifted, his eyes narrowing, his posture adjusting. It wasn't the reaction of a judge. It was the reaction of someone who had just heard something rare. Maria's voice grew, climbing into a richer, fuller tone. She didn't just sing the melody. She poured the history of her life into it. Each note echoed the struggles she had faced. Nights when electricity flickered, days when money was tight, moments when she questioned whether a girl from Davao could ever belong on a world stage. But she also sang the triumphs, the applause of small crowds, the encouragement from teachers, the laughter of her family, the unshakable belief that music was her destiny. As she reached the first chorus, the entire audience seemed to stop breathing. Conversations halted. Phones lowered. Even the usual background murmurs vanished. It was as if Maria had cast a spell over the room, pulling everyone into her story. Tears glimmered in the eyes of some audience members, their hands slowly lifting toward their hearts. The camera zoomed in on Maria's face. Her expression was raw, emotion swirling behind each word, her voice trembling at the edges but never breaking. She looked like someone fighting through the shadows just to reach a single beam of light. And in that moment, she found it. As she soared into the high notes, her voice expanded with surprising power. The sound filled the massive theater, bouncing off the walls in a wave that felt warm and haunting at the same time. The judges exchanged glances, impressed, moved, stunned. Simon leaned forward, elbows on the table, his eyes locked on Maria with a seriousness rarely seen during auditions. When she reached the climax, Maria did not hold back. She let every ounce of emotion flood through her, unleashing a final, breathtaking note that shook the silence and lifted the crowd to its feet. The theater erupted in applause, wild, thunderous, unstoppable. Maria stood there, chest rising and falling in rapid breaths, tears threatening to spill. She looked out at the cheering crowd, at the judges standing, at the moment she had dreamed of since childhood, and realized she had just lived the most powerful minute of her life. For a long moment after Maria's final note faded into silence, the theater remained frozen. The audience stood but made no sound, as if they were held in the gravity of something too powerful to break just yet. Maria remained still in the center of the stage, her hands slightly trembling around the microphone, her breath short and uneven from the emotional climb she had just made. She could hear her heartbeat louder than anything else, thudding like a drum against her ribs as she waited for someone, anyone, to speak. Then, slowly, Simon Cowell rose to his feet. The audience gasped, an instinctive reaction to a gesture that meant far more than applause. Simon didn't stand easily. He stood with intention, like a man acknowledging something rare and unforgettable. His hands pressed on the table, his expression strangely soft, his eyes fixed on Maria as though he were seeing a story written in light and sound rather than words. Maria's breath hitched. She had seen clips of Simon giving standing ovations before, but they were few, far between, and always for performers who shook the entire show. And now he was standing for her, a girl from Davao City who had once sung on a bamboo stage in a barangay fiesta. Her throat tightened as the crowd slowly erupted into cheers again, louder this time, more emotional, fueled by the shock of Simon's reaction. When the applause finally calmed, Simon remained on his feet for a few seconds longer before taking his seat again. He leaned into his microphone, but for a moment he didn't speak. He simply looked at her. Maria could see something unreadable flicker across his face: admiration, respect, disbelief. Then he said, in a voice lower and more controlled than usual, "Maria, that wasn't just singing." The audience murmured. The other judges turned to Simon, sensing that something extraordinary was coming. Simon continued, "That was storytelling. That was art. That was someone bringing their entire life on stage and letting us feel every part of it." Maria's hands flew to her mouth. Tears gathered instantly, blurring her vision. She had dreamed that Simon might like her performance, but she never imagined he would speak with that kind of sincerity. No sarcasm, no critiques hidden between compliments. Just truth. "You have a voice," Simon said, pausing deliberately, "that carries emotion in a way most singers can only hope for. When you hit that high note, it wasn't just a high note. It was a breakthrough. It was the sound of someone who has fought hard and won." The crowd erupted again. Sophia clapped her hands together excitedly. Heidi dabbed the corner of her eye. Howie nodded, looking deeply moved. But Simon wasn't finished. "Maria, I need you to understand something. What you did tonight wasn't ordinary. It wasn't even excellent. It was defining." He leaned back slightly, still watching her. "You just set a new standard on AGT." Maria felt her knees weaken. She pressed her free hand against her chest, trying to keep herself grounded. The applause thundered around her once more, rising and falling like waves as the audience fed off Simon's words. "From the very first note," Simon added, "you had the entire room in the palm of your hand. That doesn't happen often. That's why I stood." He let the words settle, their weight sinking deep into the hearts of everyone listening. "Because moments like this are must-watch moments. Moments that people will remember for years. Moments that remind us why this show exists. Maria's tears finally fell, warm trails down her cheeks as her dream wrapped around her like a long-awaited embrace. Simon smiled, a rare, genuine smile, and nodded at her, almost as if giving silent permission for her emotions to spill freely. In that moment, under the dazzling lights of AGT, Maria realized that she hadn't just performed. She had arrived. She had taken a global stage and left a mark so powerful that even Simon Cowell couldn't remain seated. The moment Maria stepped off the AGT stage, her legs almost gave out beneath her. The adrenaline that had carried her through every note began to drain, leaving her trembling but weightless, as if she were floating in a place between dreams and reality. Backstage lights shimmered around her, casting soft halos on the walls, but all she could see clearly was the blurry outline of her mother running toward her. "Anik!" her mother cried, pulling her into a tight embrace. Maria pressed her face against her mother's shoulder, the familiar scent of home filling her lungs as tears continued to spill freely. The audience's roaring applause still echoed in her ears, and somewhere far behind those sounds was Simon Cowell's voice repeating in her mind, "You set a new standard." Her mother held her face in her hands, wiping her tears. "I told you, Maria. I told you your voice would reach the world." Maria could only nod, unable to form words yet. Her chest felt too full, her emotions tangled between disbelief, joy, and a deep aching gratitude. A camera crew approached gently, not wanting to interrupt the mother-daughter moment, but knowing this was the kind of scene people would never forget. Maria smiled shyly through her tears as a producer asked, "How does it feel knowing Simon Cowell stood for you?" Maria laughed softly, a breathy, disbelieving laugh, as she clutched her mother's arm for support. "It feels like I finally woke up inside my dream," she said, her voice trembling. Meanwhile, out in the crowd, her performance had already begun to take on a life of its own. People were replaying the moment on their phones, whispering to each other about the girl from the Philippines who made the entire theater fall silent. Clips began circulating online within minutes. Across Manila, Cebu, Davao, and even remote provinces, Filipinos watching the live stream erupted in pride, flooding social media with comments like "Pinoy Pride" and "Dabawinia representing all of us." Maria's voice, soft yet powerful, began to spread across borders faster than she could have imagined. Backstage, the other judges approached her. Sophia hugged her tightly, telling her, "You brought so much heart. I could feel your story in every note." Heidi stroked her arm gently and said, "You're going to inspire so many young girls who look like you, who come from where you come from." Howie gave her a warm smile and said, "You didn't just sing. You connected. That's rare." But it was Simon who lingered in the background for a while, quietly watching her with an expression somewhere between pride and awe. When he finally stepped closer, Maria straightened slightly, her breath catching once more. Simon nodded at her, hands in his pockets, his voice warm but steady. "You did something very important tonight," he said. "You reminded everyone what this show is about. Not gimmicks. Not tricks. Just pure talent and authenticity." Maria bowed her head, overwhelmed, her voice barely above a whisper as she replied, "Thank you, sir. You don't know what this means to me, to my family, to everyone back home." Simon stepped closer and quietly said, "Oh, I think I do. And I think they're very proud of you right now." When the filming wrapped and the chatter died down, Maria found a quiet corner and sank onto a bench. She stared at her hands, The hands that once held cheap microphones at barangay contests, the hands that sometimes shook when she doubted herself. And now those same hands had held a moment that shook an entire theater. She closed her eyes and listened to her own heartbeat, steady and strong, as tears of gratitude continued to fall. This wasn't just a victory. It wasn't just a performance. It was the beginning of something far bigger than she had imagined. It was the moment a Filipino dream, carried from the vibrant streets of Davao to the world's biggest stage, finally burst into brilliant, undeniable light.